"This work is fake, sir," said the maid's son. The millionaire rolls his eyes, but soon gets shocked. In front of New York's most powerful elite, a humble boy dared to defy them all. What seemed like just another million-dollar auction turned into a scandal no one would ever forget. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel now to help us bring you more moving stories that impact lives. Thank you. The Crowell Art Gallery in Manhattan had never been so illuminated. Crystal chandeliers reflected on marble tables, champagne was poured from sparkling glasses, and dozens of business people, art critics, and wealthy collectors jostled for space to see the star of the evening. A supposedly unpublished painting by a 17th-century Italian master. At the center of it all, the imposing Sebastian Crowell, heir and owner of the gallery chain, displayed his usual self-confidence, greeting guests with a superior smile. For many, this opening would be just another display of luxury and power. For others, it could become the most daring investment of their lives. The atmosphere was one of absolute glamour, but a quiet tension hovered, as if something grand or dangerous was about to happen. Among the waiters and staff discreetly rushing to serve the elite stood Noah Delgado, just 14 years old, carrying a tray almost larger than himself. Son of Lucia Delgado, the maid who had dedicated her life to serving the Crowell family for years, Noah observed every detail with attentive eyes. His steps were firm, but his mind was restless. He didn't just see the beauty of the dresses and jewelry. He saw prints, marks, shadows. Unlike the others, who were captivated by the glitter of the occasion, Noah noticed details that went unnoticed even by experts. There was something about that night that seemed at odds with perfection. The boy sensed, though he couldn't explain it, that the painting everyone was applauding hid more than it revealed. When the most anticipated moment arrived, Sebastian took the stage, bearing a king before his subjects. He raised his crystal goblet and announced, with theatrical pride, the official opening of the auction. "Ladies and gentlemen, before you, the masterpiece that will change the history of art in New York," he declared, pointing to the painting encased in a golden frame. The audience erupted in applause, camera flashes erupted, and murmurs of admiration spread throughout the hall. It was at that moment that Noah's eyes, discreetly positioned in the background, fixed on the canvas. He didn't yet know how or when, but something inside him whispered, "This work is not what it seems." And with that thought, an unexpected journey was about to begin. The room was filled with men in impeccable suits and women draped in shimmering gowns, as if each were seeking to prove their belonging to a superior caste. Murmurs of millionaire figures filled the air, accompanied by the clinking of glasses. Some commented on their latest acquisitions, others bet on who would bid the highest that night. The atmosphere of power was so dense it seemed to overwhelm anyone not part of that world. Sebastian Crowell moved among the guests like an orchestra conductor, proud to lead this spectacle. But behind the appearance of sophistication lay anxious glances, veiled disputes, and hidden agendas that transformed the room into a veritable silent battlefield. Meanwhile, Lucia Delgado, dressed in her simple maid's uniform, moved discreetly between the tables, ensuring that the gentlemen and ladies of high society lacked nothing. From afar, she kept an eye on her son, Noah, making sure he didn't draw attention. Lucia knew the boy's curious nature and feared that, amidst so much luxury, he would attract unwanted glances. Noah, however, seemed oblivious to the pomp of the occasion. To him, the jewels and fake smiles mattered little. What truly captured his attention was the painting at center stage. His eyes had already caught something peculiar, a subtle detail that no one else seemed to notice. It was as if a hidden truth called to him. As the auction approached, the buzz grew. Renowned critics exchanged opinions on the painting's supposed historical value. Some spoke of opening bids of $5 million. Others bet the price would surpass any record of the night. The mood was one of collective euphoria, but also of vanity. Each guest wanted to be remembered as the one who dared to bid the highest, as the holder of a prestigious trophy. Noah, motionless for a few moments, felt his heart race. With every passing minute, the certainty that something was wrong grew stronger. This wouldn't be just an auction. It would be a night where uncomfortable truths would come to light. And one boy's watchful eye could change everyone's fate. Tray still in hand, Noah Delgado slunk around the corners of the room, trying not to attract attention. But behind his discreet posture lay eyes that saw beyond the surface shine. Every reflection of light on the canvas, every shadow on the gilded frame, every line that escaped the collector's distracted gaze was registered by the boy's curious mind. Unlike the experts who spoke of grandiose theories, Noah lingered on the details. He noticed small irregularities in the artist's signature, layers of paint that seemed to be from different periods, and even a slight difference in hue that betrayed something hidden. It was as if the painting was screaming a secret only he could hear. Across the room, Sebastian Crowell watched with satisfaction as his guests cheered. For him, the event was a crowning achievement of his power, a reminder that his gallery was the center of the New York art world. However, Sebastian's confidence didn't extend to everyone present. Lucia, the housekeeper, noticed her son's watchful eyes and felt a tightness in her chest. She knew that look well. It was the same look Noah gave when he discovered something hidden in the house, when he took apart small objects just to understand how they worked. She feared that, in such a rigid and elitist environment, his curiosity might be interpreted as insolence. Her steps quickened as she tried to reach her son before he did something that would compromise them both. Noah, however, seemed unable to contain himself. He moved closer to the painting while collecting empty glasses from a nearby table. Feigning distraction, he leaned in slightly, as if it were merely an innocent glance, but his heart was racing. With each passing second, the conviction grew within him. There was something deeply wrong with this work. The boy didn't know how or when, but he felt he had to speak out, even if his voice was ignored or ridiculed. The future of the night, and perhaps of everyone there, was about to be influenced by a detail no one else dared to see. The lights in the hall gradually dimmed, until a single beam illuminated the central stage. With an elegant gesture, Sebastian Crowell revealed the work that had been hidden under a red velvet cloth. The murmur of anticipation turned into a collective sigh of enchantment. The painting, surrounded by an ornate gilded frame, depicted a countryside scene supposedly painted by Giovanni Bellerini, an Italian master whose rarity made any piece reach stratospheric values. The experts present nearly rose from their chairs, amazed by the unique opportunity to witness the work. Sebastian raised his arms as if he were the conductor of a show, savoring every second of admiration around him. As euphoric applause rang out, Noah Delgado remained motionless, the tray resting against his chest. He didn't just see beauty, he saw incongruities. His eyes scanned the painting's features like someone silently reading a story. He noticed that the brushstrokes in some areas seemed more recent. The crackle didn't match the painting's age, and, near the bottom corner, a strange relief betrayed something hidden beneath the paint. The boy's heart raced. It was as if the painting was speaking to him, revealing a secret no one dared to perceive. Noah swallowed, torn between remaining silent as he had always been taught, or giving voice to what his intuition was screaming. Lucia, seeing her son staring intently at the work, felt her stomach churn. She knew every nuance of that look and knew what it meant. Noah was about to do something. Holding a tray of glasses tightly, she tried to catch his attention from a distance, shaking her head in warning. But it was too late. Within the boy was growing an almost uncontrollable certainty. That work was not what it seemed. Amidst laughter, toasts, and promises of fortune, Noah was the only one who sensed the crack beneath the perfection. And deep down, He already knew, at some point that night, he would have to say out loud what no one wanted to hear. The room, previously filled with murmurs and quiet laughter, fell silent when Sebastian Crowell raised his voice. With a confident smile, he announced the starting bid, $5 million. The impact was immediate. Some hands rose without hesitation, as if that absurd sum were just another number in the midst of his fortune. Others hesitated, calculating not only the financial value, but also the social prestige that would come with owning such a rare piece. Within seconds, the bidding began. 6 million, 7 million, 8 million. The figures soared like sparks in a bonfire, fueled by the ego and vanity of each guest. In the corner of the room, Noah Delgado watched, wide-eyed, every gesture of the collectors. Each new bid seemed to push him to his breaking point. He knew, with a burning certainty, that the painting concealed a fraud. But who would listen to a boy in a simple uniform, the son of a maid, in a room where everyone boasted of diplomas, titles, and million-dollar bank accounts? With each announced number, Noah felt the weight of injustice grow on his shoulders. If he remained silent, someone would spend fortunes on a lie. And if he spoke, he could destroy not only his life, but his mother's as well. Lucia, sensing her son's unease, felt her heart race. She moved between tables and guests, hoping Noah would restrain himself. She knew that in environments like this, one wrong move was enough to be expelled and humiliated. But Noah couldn't help himself. His eyes flickered from the painting to the stage, and from the stage to Sebastian, as if gauging the courage he would need to break the silence. The auction progressed at a frenetic pace, and with each new bid, the feeling that something needed to be done grew within him. Time was running out. The room vibrated with the promise of fortune, but only Noah saw the abyss about to open. As the numbers echoed through the hall like hammer blows of inevitable fate, Noah Delgado discreetly approached a side table, positioning himself closer to the stage. Pretending to collect empty glasses, he tilted his face toward the painting. It was at that moment that his eyes caught something that experts and collectors, blinded by the shine of money, would never notice: a slight difference in texture in the lower left corner. Beneath the layer of aged paint, there was an irregular line, a hastily covered mark. It was subtle, but to Noah, accustomed to observing the world in silence, it seemed like a clear cry. This painting was hiding something. A chill ran down his spine, as if he had just opened a forbidden door. The auction continued. 9 million, 10 million. The audience applauded with each new bid, while Sebastian Crowell maintained the confident smile of a man at the height of his glory. But Noah couldn't tear his gaze away from that detail. It was as if each second reinforced the certainty that this work did not belong to the Italian master everyone believed. He knew he had seen it before: small attempts at imitating ancient crackles, mistakes in layers of paint that art teachers called clumsy forgeries. Memories of books he had leafed through in public libraries came flooding back, mingling with what he now saw with his own eyes. The boy felt his heart race. If he didn't speak, he would be allowing a $1 million lie to be sold as truth. Lucia, across the room, noticed her son's expression change. It wasn't just curiosity, it was determination. Fear gripped her. She knew Noah's boldness well, and knew that when he believed in something, he rarely backed down. She tried to discreetly signal him to calm down, but he was absorbed. The detail he had discovered seemed to pulse before his eyes, as if begging to be revealed. The entire room vibrated with euphoria, but for Noah, time seemed to stand still. With each blow of the auctioneer's gavel, courage and risk grew together. He no longer wondered if he would speak, but when. The silence following the final bid was broken by an unexpected voice. Small but firm, it cut through the luxurious hall like a sharp blade. "Sir, this work is a fake." The words came from the mouth of Noah Delgado, who still held the tray to his chest, his eyes fixed on the painting. For a moment, no one reacted. It was as if time had frozen. Then, suppressed laughter began to spread among the guests, followed by looks of contempt. Who dared interrupt a $1 million auction? A boy, the maid's son, dressed in a simple uniform, questioning experts in front of New York's most powerful elite. The shock quickly turned to collective derision. Sebastian Crowell, on stage, narrowed his eyes, clearly irritated. His haughty expression gave way to a forced smile, as if trying to maintain control in the face of an absurd situation. "And what would you know about that, boy?" he said sarcastically, provoking renewed laughter from the audience. Some collectors shook their heads, others whispered that it was unacceptable. But Noah didn't back down. Gripping the tray tightly, he took a deep breath and faced the man everyone feared to cross. "I can prove it," he said, his voice firmer now, reverberating in the uncomfortable silence that had settled after the laughter. The boy knew he was risking everything, but his conviction was stronger than his fear. Lucia, paralyzed in the background, felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Her first impulse was to run to her son and pull him back into the kitchen, begging him to shut up before it was too late. But there was something in Noah's gaze that stopped her, that mixture of fear and courage, the same she'd seen when he defended classmates from injustice. Her heart raced, knowing that every word he said could cost her her job, or worse, scar her family forever. Yet, as the eyes of Sebastian and everyone present turned to the boy, Noah maintained his composure. For the first time that night, luxury and arrogance gave way to the boldness of a voice no one expected to hear. The heavy silence that had formed was broken by Sebastian Crowell's loud laugh, echoing through the hall like thunder. The millionaire, impeccably suited and arrogantly glancing, took a few steps down from the stage, looking Noah down. "False," he repeated, savoring every syllable with disdain. "You, a boy who barely knows how to hold a tray, dare assert something that not even the greatest art experts in this country have dared to question." The audience burst into laughter, encouraged by Sebastian's sarcastic tone. To them, it was nothing more than an anecdote, a curious moment amidst the $1 million spectacle. Noah, however, remained steadfast, despite his sweaty palms and racing heart. The audience roared with cruel comments. "How cheeky," muttered a lady in sparkling jewelry. "Let the boy play expert," a businessman mocked. Each word felt like a stone thrown at Noah, but his eyes never left the screen illuminated by the beam of light. Sebastian, realizing the boy wasn't backing down, leaned even closer, leaning in until his face was almost touching his. "Do you have any idea how ridiculous you're making yourself? Are you going to embarrass your mother in front of all of New York?" he snapped, his voice cutting. The room waited anxiously, as if expecting to see the boy cower and apologize. But Noah's breathing, though shaky, remained steady. He knew he couldn't back down. Lucia Delgado, tears welling in her eyes, felt torn apart. Every insult leveled at her son cut like a blade. She tried to move, to take a step forward, but her legs felt rooted to the spot. The fear of losing her job and being expelled in front of everyone paralyzed her, but her maternal instincts begged her to protect him. Meanwhile, Sebastian raised his voice again, theatrical and arrogant. "Gentlemen, here's our new art critic, the maid's son, revealing his great discovery." Thunderous laughter echoed through the room. But behind the jeers, a spark of unease began to emerge between some of the glances. Noah didn't waver, and this firmness, amidst the contempt, began to shake the millionaire's cynical confidence. The laughter was still echoing when Noah Delgado took a deep breath and lifted his chin, staring directly into Sebastian Crowell's eyes. There was fear in his expression, yes, but also a determination that belied his youth. "I'm not joking, sir. This work is fake, and I can prove it," he said in a firm voice that silenced, for a few seconds, even the most mocking audience. The laughter was replaced by an uncomfortable silence, The kind of pause no one expects in a room accustomed to the millionaire's absolute control. Noah, at just 14, challenged not only Sebastian, but the entire logic of power that reigned in that place. Sebastian narrowed his eyes, his arrogance giving way to a hint of irritation. He hadn't expected the boy to resist the pressure so much. "Prove it," he repeated, crossing his arms in front of him. "You have no proof, kid. You're just looking for attention. Get back to the kitchen before I send security to remove you." But Noah didn't move. Instead, he took a step forward, still holding the tray with trembling hands, as if it were his makeshift armor. "Just give me a few minutes to look at the work. If I'm wrong, you can laugh at me in front of everyone. But if I'm right, you'll have to admit you fooled this entire room." The words, spoken with unexpected conviction, echoed like a challenge impossible to ignore. The guests glanced at each other, some laughing nervously, others frowning doubtfully. For the first time that night, their absolute trust in Sebastian began to crack. Lucia Delgado, her hands trembling, brought her fingers to her mouth in a gesture of silent despair. She knew that if her son was wrong, the humiliation would be unbearable and they would lose everything. But there was also something inside her, a spark of hope that reminded her how different Noah had always been, how he had always seen what others couldn't. The entire room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for Sebastian's answer. And deep down, despite himself, the millionaire knew, if he didn't allow the boy to speak, it would look like he had something to hide. The entire hall fell silent as Sebastian Crowell, annoyed, gestured curtly for the painting to be brought closer. Two confused assistants pushed the heavy canvas to the center of the stage, under the intense spotlight. Sebastian crossed his arms defiantly, certain the boy would lose himself in front of so many important people. Noah Delgado, however, took a few hesitant steps and placed the tray on a table, freeing his hands. His heart seemed to be beating loudly enough for everyone to hear, but his voice was firm. "Look here," in the lower left corner. He pointed with his finger, revealing the area that had caught his attention. For a moment, the audience just frowned, not understanding what was wrong. Noah asked for a flashlight, and at first there was mocking laughter. One of the collectors muttered, "A child is going to give a forensics lesson now?" But someone, curious, handed him a small portable light used by photographers. Noah turned on the beam and directed it at the exact spot he had observed. Slowly, the texture of the paint revealed a hidden signature covered by fresh layers. The audience leaned in to get a better look. Murmurs filled the hall. It wasn't the signature of Giovanni Bellerini, the acclaimed Italian master. It was another name, clearly inserted in a disguised manner, as if someone had tried to mask the real authorship. The contrast was clear to any attentive eye. Shock ran through the crowd. Sebastian tried to laugh nervously, but his voice sounded strangely forced. "Tricks of light. Nothing more," he said, but now his posture no longer conveyed the same confidence. One of the critics present quickly approached, adjusted his glasses, and loudly confirmed, "It's not Bellerini. This line belongs to a well-known forger from the last century." The audience reacted with immediate indignation. Millionaires who had been bidding for the work minutes before began to protest, demanding explanations. The euphoric atmosphere turned to revolt. Sebastian, who had until then ridiculed Noah, now felt the weight of each guest's gaze upon him. And the boy, previously invisible, became the voice that had revealed the fraud before everyone. The hall, which minutes before had been vibrating with clinking glasses and enthusiastic applause, was plunged into a heavy hubbub, like a swarm of indignant voices. "Fraud," shouted one of the collectors, raising the hand he had just raised to offer 10 million. Others rose from their chairs in fury, questioning how Sebastian Crowell had dared to offer a forgery at such a prestigious auction. The glittering jewels, impeccable suits, and aristocratic smiles gave way to furious looks and accusing fingers. The atmosphere of luxury dissolved, replaced by the chaos of a crowd feeling cheated. The Crowell name, until then synonymous with power and prestige, was beginning to be tarnished before everyone's eyes. Sebastian tried to regain control, raising his hands and pleading for calm, but his every word felt like gasoline being thrown on the fire. "Gentlemen, please, this is just a misunderstanding. Everything will be explained." But the audience no longer listened to him as they had before. One of the city's most respected critics, known for his relentless rigidity, raised his voice. "This painting is a fraud, Crowell. You tried to sell a lie as if it were history." The impact was devastating. The audience, once reverent, now regarded Sebastian with contempt and hostility. Some guests were already gathering their belongings, vowing never to set foot in that gallery again. Others demanded immediate restitution and threatened to take the matter to the press. In the corner, Noah Delgado stood motionless, feeling the weight of what he had caused. His chest burned with a mixture of fear and courage, but for the first time, he didn't feel invisible. Lucia Delgado, tears streaming discreetly down her face, watched her son with a mixture of terror and pride. She knew that by opening his mouth, Noah had put not only Sebastian against the wall, but also the future of his own family at risk. However, the chaos that dominated the room made it clear nothing would be the same. The guests screamed, Sebastian tried to defend himself, and Noah's name echoed in disbelieving whispers. The maid's son had unmasked an empire before the most powerful eyes in New York. As the cries of outrage echoed through the hall, Sebastian Crowell felt his hands tremble, hidden behind his back. For the first time in years, the man who controlled galleries in several cities around the world had nothing to say. His mind whirled in despair, trying to calculate the extent of the damage. That night wasn't just about losing a multi-million-dollar auction. It was about credibility. Without it, investors would withdraw support, contracts would be broken, and collectors would never trust his name again. The empire built on decades of luxury and influence was suddenly in ruins before everyone's eyes, and what had detonated it wasn't a powerful rival, but the unexpected voice of a maid's son. The murmurs turned to threats. Some guests talked about suing Sebastian, demanding compensation for the risk of having invested in a fraud. Others were already dialing journalists, eager to publicize the scandal that would undoubtedly be splashed across the front pages of the newspapers by morning. Sebastian felt his reputation slipping away like sand through his fingers. This can't be happening, not because of him, he thought, staring at Noah with a mixture of hatred and disbelief. The arrogance that had previously dominated his expression had been replaced by restrained dread. For the first time, he realized his position wasn't as unshakable as he'd believed. In the corner, Noah Delgado watched silently, without boasting. There was no pride in his gaze, only the firmness of someone who knew he had done the right thing. Beside him, Lucia could barely breathe, fearing that Sebastian, in his despair, would once again take revenge on them. But the millionaire was too busy trying to contain his collapse. Every accusatory voice was a cruel reminder that he had lost control, and every look of contempt was a blow to his carefully constructed image. The gala ballroom, which should have crowned his glory, had become the stage for his downfall. And all because one boy dared to say aloud what everyone else ignored. "This work is a fake, sir." Amidst the tumult, one of the most respected art experts present, Dr. Harold Kensington, raised his voice, imposing authority over the chaos. "Bring the work to me," he ordered, with the firm calm of someone accustomed to deciding fates in a matter of seconds. Two visibly embarrassed assistants removed the painting from its pedestal and carried it to a lighted table. The audience leaned forward anxiously. Sebastian tried to protest, but his voice was drowned out by the shouts demanding transparency. Dr. Kensington adjusted his glasses, brought the flashlight closer, and, with trained eyes, scanned every detail of the canvas. It took only a few seconds for his expression to change. When he looked up, there was no doubt. This painting is a forgery. The hall exploded in shock. A deathly silence fell for a few moments, followed by an even stronger wave of indignation. Guests murmured among themselves, horrified by the audacity of the fraud. Some recorded the moment on their cell phones, already imagining the headlines that would spread around the world within hours. Crowell tried to deceive New York with a fake work. They whispered, while Sebastian felt his body tremble. He tried to argue, but the words came out fragmented, unable to reconstruct his shattered image. Dr. Kensington's confirmation left no room for excuses. The Crowell Empire had been unmasked before the entire elite that sustained its prestige. Meanwhile, Noah Delgado remained beside his mother, motionless, but with his heart racing. He didn't need to say anything else. The truth now had an official voice. For the first time, looks of admiration appeared among those present, directed at the boy who had dared to stand up to all the powerful. Lucia, with tears in her eyes, held her son's hand, feeling a mixture of fear and pride. Noah had spoken when no one else would have dared, and now his revelation was confirmed by an indisputable authority. The maid's son, the invisible man of the salon, had become the center of the evening, and every second that passed only deepened Sebastian Crowell's irreversible humiliation. Camera flashes began to flash like wildfire, capturing Sebastian Crowell's every expression. The man who hours before had paraded as the absolute king of the night now seemed to shrink under the weight of the stares. He tried to smile, but the gesture was shaky and forced, further exposing his fragility. This is just a mistaken origin," he murmured, but no one believed him. The audience, previously reverent, now laughed with contempt. "A $10 million mistake," one of the collectors quipped, eliciting bitter laughter. Sebastian felt his face burn, not with pride, but with shame, an emotion he hadn't experienced since the days before he ruled empires. For the first time, his name inspired not respect, but scorn. Some guests stood up and left the room, slamming doors in a silent act of protest. Others, less restrained, filmed the scene with their cell phones, loudly commenting that the news would be in the newspapers later that night. Sebastian tried to stand up straight, but his voice faltered. He knew that every second of exposure was a sentence against his reputation. His empire wasn't just crumbling financially. It was being eroded by public humiliation, by the image of a millionaire who couldn't defend himself against a boy. And the most painful detail was precisely this. It wasn't a rival, nor an expert, but the maid's son who had disarmed him in front of the world's elite. At the back of the room, Noah Delgado watched in silence. He didn't smile, nor did he celebrate. His face reflected the seriousness of someone who understood the weight of what he had done. Lucia, for her part, could barely hold back her tears. She felt fear of what was to come, but also a strange sense of justice being served. Noah had faced the untouchable and shown the world that even the most powerful can fall. Sebastian, looking around, sought support in familiar faces, but found only contempt, disbelief, and even satisfaction in his downfall. The man he used to humiliate now experienced the bitter taste of being humiliated, and that would be a scar impossible to erase. Amidst the tumult, a deep, respectful voice rose in the room. Alexander Monroe, one of the most renowned art collectors in the United States, slowly rose from his chair. Unlike the others, there was no arrogance in his gaze, but rather admiration. He walked over to where Noah stood, ignoring the curious glances from the audience. "Boy, you saw what none of us could see," he said solemnly. A murmur of astonishment rippled through the room. For the first time that night, the maid's son was not the target of laughter, but of respect. Alexander's posture carried enough weight to silence even the most vociferous critics. Sebastian Crowell, still trembling, watched the scene in disbelief. Seeing one of the most influential men in the art world address the boy was like receiving the final blow to his reputation. Alexander continued, placing a firm hand on Noah's shoulder. Talent like that cannot be wasted. You deserve far greater opportunities than serving trays at parties like this. The audience, which had previously jeered, now murmured in approval. Some even applauded quietly, recognizing the boy's courage and discerning gaze. The contrast was overwhelming. While Sebastian sank into shame, Noah soared before everyone. Lucia Delgado, stunned, brought her hands to her face, unable to hold back the tears. For years, she had believed her son's destiny was confined to the shadows of humble labor. Now, before the entire elite, he was extolled as someone worthy of a future. Alexander then made an announcement that sealed the night. He would offer Noah a full scholarship to a prestigious art school, as well as an internship at his own foundation. The room reacted with applause, this time sincere and even emotional tears in some eyes. Noah, still in disbelief, looked at his mother, who simply nodded through tears. For the first time, he felt he wasn't just the maid's son. He was Noah Delgado, the boy who unmasked an empire with his courage. When the applause died down, the hall was no longer the same. The space that had begun the evening as a stage for ostentation and vanity had transformed into a scene of unexpected justice. Sebastian Crowell, once feared and admired, remained silent, defeated, unable to sustain the haughty gaze he had so cultivated. With each whisper of derision, his image crumbled further, and the certainty that his name would make headlines for shameful reasons crushed his chest. The empire he had built with arrogance was shaken, and nothing could erase the memory that its downfall had been exposed before everyone, by a boy invisible until that night. It was the end of his glory, and he knew it. Across the room, Noah Delgado walked beside his mother, surrounded by gazes that once held contempt and now reflected respect and even admiration. Lucia, tears streaming, held her son's hand tightly, as if afraid to wake from a good dream. She knew they would still face difficulties, but something had changed forever. Noah was no longer just the maid's son. He had become a symbol of courage, justice, and truth. What had begun as a night of unattainable luxury for them ended as proof that dignity is not measured by wealth, but by the courage to face lies. As they left the hall, the murmur of the audience accompanied every step. Some approached to greet Noah. Others simply watched in silence, as if recognizing in this boy a greatness they hadn't expected to find. Outside, the lights of New York City shone brightly, reflecting the promise of a different future. Noah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of that night transform into hope. For the first time, he didn't shrink before the grandeur of the world. He smiled discreetly at his mother and thought, "It all started because I had the courage to tell the truth." And so, amid tears and applause, the maid's son emerged from anonymity to enter history. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel now, activate the bell, and share. This way, you'll help us bring you more moving stories that impact and transform lives. Thank you so much for your support.